Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Expat Woman Show. My name is Nyna Caputi. I'm the founder and CEO of the Expat Woman and the host of the show. I go live every Tuesday with an expat guest. And today I'm really excited to bring you Mariam, who is an author and an expat mom and a lot of other very impressive things. She's based in Portugal, but I'm going to actually have, like I usually do, have my guests share a little bit about herself, where she lives, her expat journey, what you do, and then we're going to go into this really exciting topic of being an expat woman and then becoming an author, which I'm sure is not easy. So welcome, Mariam, and thank you so much for making the time to be on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Nyna. It's a pleasure to finally be here and to be chatting with you. And I've been looking forward to it all week.
Yeah, so Mariam, thank you. So go ahead and just tell us about your expat journey and then also your career journey and how did you get to where you are today? I know it's a big question, but go ahead.
Sure, I'll start off with the short version, as I like to call it. But I like to joke that, I've been an expat since birth because at the time of my birth, it was actually my parents who were the expatriates. And my parents are from Pakistan, and they had been posted and were living in the Kingdom of Bahrain at the time that I was born. So, this was 1982, and I was born into their expat life. But my mom did make sure to go back home to give birth to me. So I was born in Pakistan and then just joined them when I was just a few weeks old and started my expat life in Manama in Bahrain. And when I was 2 years old, we moved to New York City for yet another assignment. And then eventually we repatriated to Pakistan. My parents were kind of done with the whole living abroad after more than a decade. And they said, no, we want to take you back. So I was very grateful to get a chance to grow up in my passport country of Pakistan and to have that experience of living in Karachi. I spent my teenage years there, which are kind of your identity forming years. So, that played a big role. But when I was 18, Nyna, I decided to pack up my suitcase. I had a blue suitcase in my hand and a one-way ticket in my other hand. And I decided to go back to the United States for college and for higher education. So I arrived at Boston's Logan Airport shortly after 9/11 had happened. So it was a crazy time in the world. And the America of my childhood had changed overnight. So that was quite an experience to be living the first time you're, abroad by yourself. But those are the experiences that teach you so much because you learn how to represent yourself. You learn how to put your best foot forward. You learn how to build bridges and how to really make connections with people, no matter who they are or where they come from or what language they speak. So I think that early experience really sowed the seeds for what was to become my serial expatriation career, which turned into a very long journey of moving every few years from one country to the next. From the US, I moved to the UK. I then moved back to the US. And then from the US, I moved to Germany. I moved from Germany to Denmark. I moved from Denmark to Singapore, from Singapore to the United Arab Emirates, from the United Arab Emirates to Ghana, and then from Ghana to Portugal, which is where I'm sitting in my office here and joining you today. So in a nutshell, it's been a journey of 10 countries, 4 continents. I've learned many languages and butchered just as many, I think, as I have tried to learn. I cannot remember what my phone number is or my address is, and I really need to think twice before I put down simple information, and making a cup of coffee requires at least one international adapter every morning or 2. So that's really a little bit about my expat journey and my life until this point.
Wow. I had no idea that I don't know why, again, some crazy stuff. I hear my echo. I had no idea you lived in this many countries. I actually had a question, if you don't mind me asking, because I know,
Yes.
like India, Pakistan, sometimes parents can be more conservative. And, you left at 18 with a one-way ticket.
Alone, yes.
Yeah, alone, right? You were not married. So I'm just curious.
I wasn't.
Yeah, were your parents fine with that? How did you negotiate it? And especially one way ticket, because usually say, I'm going to study and I'll come back. And, the most
Yeah.
parents, including my parents, the biggest concern when you're a young lady is we have to get her married, right? That's like, at least that was my parents. So go ahead. Share. I'm just curious if you don't mind. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I love that you brought up this cultural insight because it is true. It is a big deal to send your teenage daughter halfway around the world. And I didn't realize what a big deal it was back then when I was 18. I only realized this now in hindsight with my own kids. Now I understand what a big thing it was for my parents to put me on that plane. I still remember that I flew Karachi to Dubai, Dubai to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to, Boston, and I was alone. And I did have my uncle in Houston who, deposited me at my college in Massachusetts. So he was like my second dad. And I think had he not been living in the US, maybe my parents would have been a bit more hesitant or nervous. But, the US is so huge, right? Here I am in Massachusetts and my uncle lives all the way down in Texas, which, it's a different country, right? But just the fact that there was somebody there who could, come in or help out or, in case there's any emergency, be there for me. I think that was something that gave my parents a bit of comfort, but also they had raised me in a way that, we talked about how it was time for my adventure. I wanted to move, not because of my dad's career, and now I currently move because of my husband's career, which we'll come to. But this was my time to move because of what I wanted to do and what my interests were and what I wanted to study and my job and my career. So I think having that experience is such a validating experience that I was very grateful that I had a chance to experience that and had my parents' support in doing that.
Yeah, no, that's very courageous because it's hard at 18. Because I remember I wanted to go abroad to study when I was in India because I studied science, but I just didn't have the courage to do it. Like a lot of my classmates did, but I just couldn't step out of my comfort zone. So, more power to you. And I'm also curious about what you studied in college, right? And then also these 10 different countries. What made you move to each of these countries? I'm sure at some point you met your husband. So when did that happen, and that's why you moved, or did your career take you, or was it just this, wanderlust because you were born in, you've lived in a few countries as a child? So would love to hear, your response to that question as well.
Sure. I think it was definitely my sense of adventure that made me leave at the age of 18, almost 19, with that blue suitcase and that one-way ticket. And then what happened was that I left the US to go to the UK. I was studying economics and political science, to answer your question. I did a double major in both. And I didn't really have the kind of courses in the US that I wanted to take because I wanted to specifically study the European economic model. So my advisor suggested that why don't you go to Europe for the year, do your junior year abroad and take those specific courses, and then you can come back and finish your economics degree here. And so, I applied to different places, and that's how I ended up in the UK at a university that specialized in development studies, specifically for people who were studying to become economists. And of course, as life would have it, Nyna, that's where my husband, my half German, half Italian husband, was also doing an exchange year from Berlin. He was doing his master's at the time and just happened to be at the same university. So, that's where we met. I was 21, he was 23. We were both obviously in the middle of getting our degrees. And after a few years of, how do we bring our lives to live on the same continent? We're like, okay, we want to get married. We want to, preferably live on the same continent. So I had graduated, I had gone back to the US. I was living in Texas at the time. And I then, my career was in investment banking. My first job out of college was at Morgan Stanley. And if you are familiar with it, you know what a crazy lifestyle it is. You work 70, 80 hours a week. You've got no life. It's not very sustainable over the long term. But, I was doing that. And then we decided, okay, we're going to mesh our lives together. And so I got married and I moved to Germany for love, not to Italy, but to Germany. I faced a huge sense of loss, sense of identity, because as we were saying, I had moved before, but I'd always done it to a place where I wanted to go, or where a place where, I was going with my family. But to move for love is a very different experience. And to move to a place where you don't speak the language is a really isolating experience. And this was the first time I was experiencing that. And to be honest, I felt like I had just become illiterate from one day to the next, right? One day I'm in Houston, I can read the newspaper, I can understand what everyone's saying around me. The next day I'm in Berlin, I don't know what the subway announcements are. And there's probably something mundane like, oh, this train's canceled, take this other train. But when you lose all context of what is being said around you, not only is it so debilitating, but it's so isolating. And the hardest part is looking at your peers or looking at other people who are in their comfort zone, in their familiar ground, and progressing in their careers or their degrees. And meanwhile, you're inside a German supermarket having a meltdown because you cannot figure out what breadcrumbs are called in German. And keep in mind, this is before we have iPhones and Google Translate, where we can easily look things up, right? And you're too scared. You're too scared to walk up to a cashier and ask what you're looking for in the language that you don't speak. So I think these are the kind of experiences, that you have when you move to a new place where you're fumbling with a new currency, you're unfamiliar with the customs, you don't speak the language, and you have to really push yourself out of your comfort zone and really say, I really need to make this my home. I really need to put in the effort. And the thing is, it doesn't matter how long you're going to stay. You still need to feel comfortable, even if it's for a day or a month or 2 months or 3 years or whatever it is. You still need to put in that effort, because otherwise you're just not living life, right? So I think that's been the trickiest part. And for me, Germany was a really hard transition. And of course, as luck would have it, as soon as I learned German and passed all my exams, we moved to Denmark. And that was because my husband got a job offered. He got a really great job offer by a Danish company. So we moved to Copenhagen. And then I was learning Danish, in the morning and trying not to forget my German. And so our moves to Denmark, to Singapore, to the UAE, we were in Dubai, and to Accra, Ghana, and also here to Portugal, have all been due to my husband's career in international shipping. And it's been his career that has made us a globally mobile family. Every few years, we've moved ourselves and our 3 kids to a new country, to a new city with a big port, and started from scratch.
Wow. Talking about Dubai, just Naveen just joined us from Dubai. Hi, Naveen. She says, hi, ladies. Yeah. It's such a small world with all of us expats. Like, it's always amazing to see who's connected with whom. I moved to the US to study, but I met my husband here, and he's actually half Italian, but, second, third generation.
Yeah.
But even though I spoke English, because I hadn't prepared to live in the US, I only came here to study. It was hard for me. I faced some of the similar things you faced, different accents. Like, I have the English Indian accent. The way people do things in the US are different than India. I had to unlearn and learn so many new things. And that's how the Expat Woman came about. I created the Expat Woman because I faced so much isolation and challenges. So I can only imagine how much harder it is with moving to a country where you don't speak the language. And when you, as you say, it wasn't your choice, right? It was my choice to move here to study, but it wasn't my choice to live here. I mean, I'm very, we move for, I say I came here to study and then I stayed for love, right? So that's yours and my story are very similar. And I think that's a little disorienting at times. So yeah, and Naveen said you came to speak about her first book in Dubai. That's so cool. And then we have Lauren joining us. I don't know Lauren, or maybe I do. I'm not connected. Lauren, let me know where you're calling in from. And in the chat, I'd love to know. Yeah, I might be connected. I'm sorry. It's, right now I have a brain freeze. So Mariam, let's go into the most important part that, I'm sure everyone's waiting to hear is, what inspired you to become an author? This has not been easy because you've been moving to all these countries and you had 3 kids, and not just taking care of yourself, but it's also, I have kids too, but we've all been in the US all along, and that I'm sure pretty challenging as well. So did this journey inspire you? I'd just love to hear what made you decide to become an author, economist to author, expat to economist to author. Yeah.
Thank you for putting it so well. I think that I'll be very honest and very frank. I think what really motivated me and inspired me to make this career change from an economist to leave my corporate, life and to be a writer, a full-time writer, was simply that I realized I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep landing in a new country where I didn't speak the language, didn't know anybody, had to do everything, build a support system, a community. I had to look for a job in my field of finance. It was draining. And unemployed Mariam is no fun to be with. Just ask my husband. She's cranky, she's annoyed, she's complaining about everything. Really, really no fun to be around or to be with. So, I'd done it a few times, and I was lucky that in Denmark I could work in finance. And Denmark was like a breath of fresh air for me in that sense, that I could continue working. But when I arrived in Singapore, it was 2012. I was 5 months pregnant with our first child, and motherhood was beckoning. I had just resigned from my career in oil trading and my job in oil trading in Copenhagen. And I thought, this is it, I finally need a portable career. I need a career that complements my life and not the other way around. I can't keep chasing, my field. And it's not working for me because I keep moving to countries where the visa requirements are different, where I'm a dependent on my husband in every sense of the word. In Singapore, I couldn't even call the phone company and say, change our plan. They'd say, oh, can we talk to the main account holder? And so I was like, okay, well, you feel such a sense of, you're just stripped of your identity. And, I was about to become a mother, and I thought, this is it. I'm going to go through a huge transition, and I want to make an equally big transition in my professional career. And I finally need a portable career that not only moves with me as I move, but also continues to grow with me no matter where I go. Right? That is really what a portable career is, that, you can take it with you and you can keep enhancing it. And so that is really what prompted me to make a full-time switch to writing. I'd always done writing in the past. It had always been more business writing, more econ-based writing. I'd co-authored a book on economics with an old professor and some other students. So I'd had all that experience, and I thought, I'm going to put that experience to good use, and I'm going to start writing. And being in Singapore was very beneficial at the time. I started I started by writing travel columns for various magazines. And then I thought, I really want to write about the expat issues I was facing, because, travel is very different from expat life. In expat life, you need to know how fix your washing machine in Danish. You need to help your child do their homework in Mandarin. You need to pay a phone bill, in Portuguese, right? And so you really need to learn life there. And I think that writing about what does it do to our identity when we constantly move so much? Who do we become? And also, how does it change us? How does it change us as people? How does it change us as parents? What do we find ourselves insisting upon? Who do we become as a result of all these experiences, nationalities, places we're calling home, and our sense of belonging? What does it do for us? So that is really what I started writing about in Dubai in 2016. I finally had the courage to start writing about these issues that were dominating my life. And I thought that if they're dominating me and affecting me, they must be affecting other people as well. So maybe I could, build a community of like-minded people who were living a life on the move, who were also facing constant transition. And we could talk about both the opportunities and the challenges that this lifestyle involves.
That, and I think, what we do really comes from the sense, from the pain we've, experienced. Like in my case, I found in the expat woman, in your case, you channeled into sharing your knowledge and creating a community through your writing, which I think is so powerful, right? I think because then you have that passion and the drive because you want to share your pain and your solutions with the world. So I just love that. So let's talk about your books. You've written two books. One is a non-fiction and one's a fiction. That is so brave. Like you because usually again you stepped out of your comfort zone to try two different kinds of writing, which is very impressive. So let's talk about both your books. If you could share a little bit about each book, why decided the first one was non-fiction and what inspired you to write the fiction book, which I know is based in Portugal, right? I have to get your books. And also, you had already written, but writing a book, whether it's non-fiction or fiction, is it's a different ball game, right? So did you get any help? Did you have a coach? Did you just study on your own? Because I know there's so many folks that are writing now, so especially expats. I don't know too many have written non-fiction. So also curious, I know a lot of expats have written non-fiction. Very few that I know have written fiction. So that's a lot of questions. But being the writer you are, I know you'll condense it and be able to share your response.
These are all really valid questions, and I'm very happy to share because I feel like we learn so much from sharing our experiences, and we never know who it might be resonating with. So I hope it's resonating with you if you're listening. I started writing my first book. The blog turned into a brand, which then turned into a book. So there was an evolution journey involved there as well. But my first book, which was nonfiction, and it's called This Messy Mobile Life, I started writing it because, quite honestly, I was a bit frustrated at seeing the very simplistic narratives that were playing out in the expat literature at the time. Either it was only about how to raise kids abroad, or it was about how to raise multicultural kids abroad, or it was about raising, a multilingual family, or it was about how to move abroad and handle transition. And for people like myself, and for people like Naveen who's listening, our families face so much transition, and we face everything coming at us at the same time. We're in multicultural relationships. We speak different languages at home. Our kids are learning other new languages in school, and so are we half the time trying to keep up. And, I thought, what about this new generation we are raising with multiple cultures, multiple languages, and multiple identities? Where are the books for them? And so when I didn't find it, I wanted to start writing it. And I wanted it to include all the messy goodness and the messy complicatedness of this beautiful lifestyle, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. And it was very important for me to call it a messy mobile life because I also wanted to give my readers the permission to acknowledge that when you exchange a life in the familiar for a life in the unfamiliar, your life will be messy. There's no such thing as a smooth move. Only someone who's never done a move, an international move, is going to wish you a smooth move, right? We all know that this is life. That's how life is. It's going to come at you. You will be out of your comfort zone. You will be stretched. You will be learning something new every day. One day you'll be crying into your coffee cup. The next day you'll be celebrating because you took the right train and you figured out your way. So I wanted to write a book that comprised not only of my experiences, but also the experiences of other families who were living this life. And so it kind of played on my strengths as an economist and as a researcher. I did a lot of research for the book, but I also ran a globally mobile survey in 2018. And the studies and the results are all included in the book. So it's sort of, an academic book as well, but it's got that personal, every chapter starts with a personal story, for instance, and every chapter ends with conversation starters for you and your family to have about your life. What's working for you? What kind of family are you? What kind of portable traditions do you take with you, no matter where you live? And what kind of values do you practice at home? What's important to you? And in making this framework, I came up with my MOLA framework, which is basically helping a globally mobile family to design their MOLA. And their MOLA is a shirt like, you or I would put on in the morning as we get ready for the day. But each MOLA, is very different. It comes from South America, and the Guna tribe, they stitch many layers of brightly colored cloth in making a MOLA shirt. And some things are hidden and some layers shine through. And in the end, when you turn the design over, you're left with a really unique design that represents your cultural heritage and shows who you are and what your journey has been. And so this metaphor of a MOLA, this concept, really spoke to me because I finally had an aha moment where I thought, I've been stitching a MOLA my whole life. I just didn't know I was doing it. Through all these moves, throughout all these new experiences, through making each new country a home, I had been stitching a new layer of identity on top of another. And I wanted to understand for myself what that looked like, but I wanted to offer it to my readers as a chance for them to do the same and for them to think about their life and say, what does my MOLA look like? And why does it look like this? And how can I use it to my best ability? And I'll just finish on this point because this point is very important. My first book is not just for globally mobile families, but it's also for anyone who is serving globally mobile families. So if you are in HR, if you are a global mobility specialist, if you work at an international school, if your client is a globally mobile family, then the book is designed to help you understand the challenges of what it means to be a globally mobile family so that you can better serve your client by understanding the inner workings of their life. So the book really has two primary audiences. The families who are moving, but also the people and the companies and the organizations who are moving them, because we need them to also understand what this life on the move is like, to be able to offer specific assistance, specific support, and most of all, understanding. In the globally mobile world, things like empathy matter almost as much as logistical know-how. So that's the sort of message I wanted to get across through this messy mobile life, that it's a messy mobile life. This is what it's like. Come embrace it, come understand it, and then let's figure out how to make the best out of it. And
can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Because I seem to have disappeared as usual. You've been kicked off my own show. It's become like a regular thing. But I heard everything you said, and I love your explanation about MOLA. I do want to, because I thought maybe you think you lost me, so I wanted to jump in with a question, and about also the because I know we have very little time left. Also, your for fiction, because you wrote this very powerful non-fiction book, and I love that it's not just for globally mobile families, but also for organizations, because we often forget that they need to be trained in this as well, right? Or with coaches who work with people who are globally mobile. Love that. So what made you decide now I'm going to write a fiction book, and also if you don't mind sharing a little bit about the book, and if in case I get kicked out, how people can buy those books?
Of course, I'd be happy to. Yes, you're right. My next book, and the one that's just come out in April of this year, is a fiction book. It's a novel. It's called The Guilty Can't Say Goodbye. And the reason I wrote a fiction novel, and I made the scary jump from nonfiction to fiction, is because, quite honestly, I felt that we needed to have globally mobile characters come into the mainstream literature, not just remain in expat literature and in nonfiction books, but actually transcend and break into fiction books and mainstream literature. Because when I would walk into a bookstore, if I go into Barnes and Noble, I want to pick up a book which has characters who face dilemmas like me, right? And I wanted to see people who are globally mobile, who have all these different layers to their identity, who've lived all over the world, who speak different languages, who are trying to figure out a sense of self. And I wanted to see them reflected on the pages. And when I didn't find that, I think that I started thinking to myself that representation is so important, and having cross-cultural characters is so important. And so that's when the seed, was sowed in my mind that I'm going to write a book which has 3 expat women as its main characters. And I'm going to make them as different from each other as they possibly can. It's not going to be three American women moving to Hong Kong as it is in The Expats, which, by the way, is starring Nicole Kidman now. No, where's the fun in that? I want a South Asian woman. I want a North American woman. I want a West African, and then I'll make them move to Europe. And then let's see how they experience that, right? So I wanted to bring in all the cross-cultural diversity of expat life into a novel and to really have these diverse characters. I have a Pakistani woman, I have an American diplomat, and I have a Ghanaian woman, a Ghanaian entrepreneur they're my three main characters, and they moved to Portugal. And their journey of building a new life in Portugal, and it's very different because the women are very different. And I wanted to make this point that the place matters, but also who we are matters so much more because, it really shapes our experiences. And so in the book, you see that these three women are trying to, create a fresh start for themselves and their families, but they've got all these deep, dark, guilty secrets from the past that keep pulling them back. And I wanted to explore that tension in a fiction setting. And I wanted to show, can we ever leave our past if we move to a new country? Do we stop being who we were just because we get on a plane? And also, I just wanted to sort of tease out the central idea or the central theme of the book, of the novel, which is, can moving to a new country give us the courage we need to truly embrace our most authentic self? And so that's the premise of The Guilty Can't Say Goodbye. And I have both books here, which I'll just hold up in case anyone wants to see them or see their covers. And of course, they're both available on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, and in all good bookstores. You can also request it from your local library. And you can definitely contact me if you have any problems or if you run into any issues, but you can find them everywhere online and in physical bookstores.
That's awesome, Mariam. Congratulations. That's I love that you wrote about three different characters. Do you think there's a movie that could be made out of this? I just want to add, I watched The Expat. I was kind of disappointed I was so excited when the show came out. And I think the only thing they got right was Hong Kong, because I haven't lived there, but my cousins live there and I've been there quite a few times. But it didn't really speak to me. So I based on the little you just shared about your book, it sounds pretty powerful. So do you have any plans for, maybe working with a producer to make the film, or is there going to be a second book? I haven't read it, so I don't know how it ends. So just curious, plans with the book.
Yes. And I must get together with you on another call to figure out who the actor would be, who the actress would be, who would play the South Asian role, right? Like, we need to figure out all those details. But yes, definitely, it's got a great potential for an on-screen adaptation. And that is definitely something I would love to pursue and am pursuing. These things take a lot of time. But that's definitely in the long-term goals for the book. And the feedback I've been getting from readers so far who have read The Guilty Can't Say Goodbye has been, there's definitely potential for a sequel as well. So let's see, that's definitely something for me to consider as well, whether that could also be a possibility or not, because I think once you create these characters, they continue to live inside your head. And, it's always interesting to see if there could be like a spin-off sequel for one of the characters or for all three of them. And so those are both definitely options to consider going forward.
That's so exciting. That's so really looking forward. Would you mind sharing in the comments the links to your books, not right now when we're done, so people can buy these books? And there's an echo. And my other question would be, what advice would you have for expats who want to become authors, whether it's non-fiction or fiction, and how long did it take you to write both books?
That's a great question. It took me less time to write non-fiction. I think it took me 1 year to write and about 6 more months to do research. So 6 months researching and 1 month writing. 1 year writing. So a year and a half. And then of course, editing and revising takes a long time as well. For fiction, it took me a lot longer just because fiction is such a different ballgame. And it took me at least 2 years to write my novel, just to give people some ideas. And then another year for revisions and editing. And then another 6 months for production, design, cover, and all of that. So you're looking at least a 2 to 3 year process, depending on what you're writing. Fiction, nonfiction can take less. But my advice to any writer, regardless of what they're looking to write, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, would be 3 things. I would say, first of all, know your why. Know why you are writing what you're writing about and what do you hope to gain out of it. Being very clear about your motivation for writing a book is the best way to make sure that you finish the book. If you are not clear on this motivation, you might not reach the finish line. You have to be crystal clear in your mind why you're writing this and what value you're going to be producing by writing a book. The second thing I'd say is don't be afraid to ask for help and don't be afraid to ask people for feedback. I definitely did use, help, especially for writing my first book. I had a writing mentor who worked with me from like the book proposal stage to the finished stage. So don't be afraid to ask people for help. Do your research, find out who would be a good fit for you, who understands your writing, and who can help. And, definitely explore that option. Nobody says you have to do it all alone. Don't feel like you have to figure everything out alone. I think that can be a very lonely journey. So ask for help and also join writers group, join critique groups, because you need constructive criticism to grow as a writer. And I know it can be really uncomfortable to put your writing out there and put yourself out there, but that is the only way you get better as a writer. And so as uncomfortable as it is, we all know growth is uncomfortable, but it's a really important step to taking your writing from one notch to the next. And I think that the last thing I would say, number 3, would be that, make sure that you know who your target audience is as well. And make sure that you are communicating with them even before your book comes out, even maybe while you're writing the book, because that way people are going to be interested in reading it and you'll already have a natural curiosity inbuilt. And I think writing and reading are such intertwined, activities. And when you're a writer, you're usually also a reader. So you really want to have those conversations and you really want to make those connections. And so connections based on storytelling are really, really important. So find out who are the other people who enjoy your storytelling and connect with them.
I'm just sharing the comments here from and Lauren.
Thank you, Nadine, and thank you, Lauren.
So thank you so much, Mariam. This was great, and I loved your tips. I hear an echo, so I'm going to end this because I don't want to spoil this beautiful conversation that you just shared. I just wanted to add, maybe I see a course on how to write a book coming from you. I think you should look into that. An online course maybe for expats to become writers, because I know there's so many aspiring authors among the expat community. So something to think about. Yeah. All right. So thank you so much for being on the show. We went a little beyond time, but I could talk for several more hours. I'd love to have you back another time, maybe when the movie is out. Yeah.
Sounds good. And thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure and definitely a highlight of my week. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you everyone who joined us, who will be watching the replay. Bye.